Thank you for joining us again. My name is Jason. I'm the product manager here at Elevated Signals. Today, I wanted to just talk about um, simplifying compliance and walking through some of the traceability tools that we have within Elevated Signals. Um, our topic list today, just want to run through how you can prepare for some audits, running through our batch production, our production batch document, um, how you can do some ad hoc document retrieval, finding information, some different ways in the software to do that. Walking through how Elevated Signals tracks inventory traceability and different ways that you can kind of visualize it. And then some best practices to staying audit ready. Um, just some things I've noticed over the years and some little tips and tricks that I feel like not very many people or some people might not have utilized yet. Um, all in all, the demo should be like 20 to 30 minutes. If you have any questions during that time, pop them into the Q&A section in Zoom, and we'll get to those or whatever we can get to afterwards. So let's get going. So one of the main tools that you can use to prepare for an audit is our production batch record. So here I'm just on a batch page here. Um, in the top right corner here, I have this download PDF button. I'll just download that while we're going. This is going to be basically a comprehensive document that pulls down all of the information that has to do with this batch. So I'm looking in the event log here. So you can see, we have like our batch creation, our import of material, and as it's been worked on through maybe a drying work order, there's a destruction logged against it, got packaged up and shipped out. Um, like a summary here, but for more detailed information, we can look at our. So at the top of our PDF here, we have our table of contents as our first page. If you have like a PDF reader, then these links all act as bookmarks as well. So obviously this document can get pretty large. But this is a good thing to download if if you're going to get an audit and someone's coming in and they're like, we want to see like everything there is about XYZ batches. They can go to those batches and download this beforehand, maybe print them out, throw them on a table and let them go to town on the document. But at the top here, we also have this generated field. This just kind of shows, hey, I generated this document like literally just now, so it's live data basically. It's new. Everything's up to date. And yeah, so at the top here, we have our table of contents, which goes through a production batch record, and then all of the individual other PDFs that can be generated within the system. If they're associated with this batch, they'll get pulled in to this batch record. And so I'll start walking through some of this to just highlight some of the information and details that it provides. So the first thing at the top here is just that event log that I showed on the actual batch page. That also shows within the PDF here is a high level thing. So I won't spend too much time on this. Um, then we have our first work order PDF. So this work order summary has all of our high level information, our total inputs of different materials, outputs of different materials, who created the work order and when, open, close, that kind of stuff, as well as drying loss or processing loss further down. And for each of the things that actually fed into the work order, we have that more in like detailed breakdown of who brought that in and where it came from, what batch it was a part of, what location it was in, all of that detailed information that auditors might like to see. Additionally, with all of these documents, you'll get this digital signature here. So you can see I have my name, I have a job title here, and a digital signature, and even has like my IP address of where I signed it from. We've got a bit of an audit event log here as well, which kind of walks through all of the, states of like when this thing changed. So when I opened the work order, when I added stuff, and or if I reopened it, or if I backdated something, all of the information is provided in this audit log. A bit more of a detailed example, I have a packaging work order also associated with this, so it has all of the same high-level information. But this time, I also have a record associated with it. So I have this in-process check for my 3.5 gram packaging activity here. So I have the same digital signature, all that stuff, but it also brings in the actual record as well, right under the work order. So it kind of keeps that entire production record together, the inventory aspect as well as any quality aspect that you have associated with that work order brought in. And that applies to records that aren't necessarily associated with the batch as well. So we'll see later on here that this record actually gets brought in again because you can see up here I've actually associated the batch that I'm looking at with this record. But the record itself is displayed like so. And then at the bottom, once again, those digital signatures with date and timestamps, job title, and then verification. So if you're using the verification feature, you're able to apply additional signatures. So this could be, someone else, and maybe they're a QA person, a QA supervisor, maybe two or three different verifications on this. Um, Another thing I wanted to highlight within the audit log here was whenever you're editing a record or you're reopening a work order, um, you can throw in a reason in there. So, um, throwing in a comment can really help just highlight why certain things are happening within this audit log. Going back up to this packaging one here, I just threw in a cheeky, deviation 1, 2, 3, 4. So tying in like a deviation or like a kappa number or something like that when you're going in and reopening a work order and leaving that in the audit log and kind of help show that you're following your SOPs, that you're staying proactive when you do need to make corrections and things like that. Um, the destruction lot PDF also gets brought in. So our destruction lot PDFs include everything that was destroyed in any given lot. So this could be full of a bunch of other information as well, but pretty much the full destruction record will be brought in. So I have my location of cannabis destruction. I have my method of destruction here. And then if I go down to the bottom, I have a witness statement here set up as well. And then whoever closes that destruction lot signs the document, as well as the ability to apply additional witness signatures to the destruction lot. And this should follow pretty closely with just like your physical destruction practices. So hopefully it could be a useful tool to bring into your production batch records. And then finally at the bottom, we have our records. So here's that record again because I tied it to the batch. And we have my last piece of my production batch record. It's a rather short one. I have my shipment to OCS, right? So I have my customer details here, information about who I'm sending it to, open this up, which facility it came from, the inventory I'm shipping from, and information about that inventory, as well as a digital signature, as always. So yeah, that's our production batch record. I'm sure you know about it, but this can be a really useful tool if it's fallen to the wayside to bring into, when you're preparing for audits and things like that, just throwing a bunch of these together for whatever they might be looking at and and just dig through it and and navigate that and look for the things that they want to. Sometimes during that process, they might ask for additional detail on things. Um, so yeah, they might ask for additional specific information. Um, so some ways to do that is, let's say if they're looking for a specific record, you can always use the full record library section here, use the filtering function here to kind of look for specific records that they might be looking for. So maybe, hey, I want to know about all of my packaging and process checks, and you can get all of those. All of my records associated with specific batches or specific locations. Those can get pulled up as well as maybe within specific time frames by using the performed on start and end time filters here to kind of find what you're looking for. Another good one is just like the general search box at the top to just look for things. whether it's like work orders or records or anything like that. But a useful tool that you might not know about is, let's say I pop open this old in process check that I have. Within this, I have like a target weight here, like set to 3.55. Let's say for whatever reason you want to find records that have the value 3.55. Within this, you can use this form search function in the quality section. You can just look for 3.55 and you can see that it actually returns. It says, hey, within this packaging and process check, I actually found the value 3.55. And so you can click on that and go in there. So if there's like additional auxiliary information that you're providing within records or anything like that, that might not be like a filterable field. You can always look for it within the form search function. Um, Another note, just like a recent addition to the software, is in the edit history on the record page itself. We actually are now displaying which fields were edited on each edit of the record itself. So you can see here, like back in November, I modified the record and I added some fields here, so on and so forth, as I made a couple of edits to this. So that diff check exists there now, as well as which versions of this edit history are verified. The verifications are version specific as well. Another thing I wanted to quickly highlight with regards to this is we actually also have in the facility settings bottom, I believe, in the batch production records PDF settings. Progress. Yeah. Show audit logs on in progress records. So this is a setting that you can enable um, that actually shows the draft change versions of this. So this is if you're using that save progress and that in progress feature that we have so that you can make progress on records before you actually have to submit them. Another thing that might help you find some information when you're being asked in the middle of an audit is our reports page. I'm sure many of you use this a lot, so I'm not going to dig into it too much. But this can be really useful for, I've seen in the past people have been asked, hey, can you pull some numbers up again so that we can match it against, maybe this CTLS or this B300 report that you submitted for, some month at some point. So you could go through and pull your reports again and give it to them and say, okay, go and try and match the numbers. Or you can prepare the information and help them out a bit. Um, it can also help with things like I want to know about all drying work orders that happened between like January 2022 and January 2023. You can pull in additions reductions report between January 2022 and 23 and just filter work order type name for drying. There's a little bit of prep work, obviously, because you're pulling a CSV report, but at the end of the day, getting those raw numbers to the auditor might just be what they're looking for. Every auditor is different, so it's hard for me to cover everything that they might ask for, but these are just some examples. Um, yeah. Another thing I wanted to walk through was actually showing some of our inventory traceability um, and just how things tie together. I'm sure if you use the software a lot, this kind of comes intuitively, but there's a couple of cool features here that we haven't really shown off before. So um, if I go into this piece of inventory that I have, my packaged inventory. So the classic way of showing traceability, right, is we have this ledger here. You can see where it's been consumed, right? So it was sent to a shipment to the OCS, for example, and I can just, click on the work order of where it was created, this packaging work order. From this, I can expand this. I can look at the inputs. Okay, I want to look at the input of the dried cannabis. And then I get the ledger again. I can see that it was consumed by packaging. It's produced by this drying work order. And I can kind of continue clicking through um, all the way to the past. And eventually I'll kind of terminate at some point, and it's pretty much always going to be against a receiving activity, a reconciliation activity, or the actual like import into the system. Um, which just kind of like shows like, that end to end, like you can pretty much track anything to anywhere, everything's tied together, as long as work order inputs and outputs are kind of being used to transfer material between steps. Um, One thing that we have is under inventory actions here, we have this trace inventory and recall report button. This can kind of visualize the steps that I just walked through. So on this piece of fresh cannabis inventory, if I hit the recall report, I'll actually get this graph here. And what this one shows is how it pushes forward into the rest of your inventory. So this shows everything that this piece of inventory ever feeds into. Unfortunately, right now the only example I have is linear, but you can imagine if you're packaging out to a few different inventories or there's a few different packaging work orders, this would kind of branch into more of like a tree structure. If you have multiple shipping orders associated with it, it's clearly visualized here. So this can be one way to just visually see um, all of the work and inventory that this originating piece impacts. Um, and of course, all of these things you can take links to go view the other piece of inventory. And then the other one is the trace inventory function, which is the same graph, but instead it pushes backwards. So this will take the inventory that you are looking at and it asks the question, hey, what are all of the different things and inventories and processes that build up into creating this piece of inventory? And so, if we have like pack materials that come from purchase orders, or if you have a couple of batches that you mix together to create this one, all of that would show up here also in kind of like a tree diagram as well. Um, yes. So the last thing I wanted to go through was just some more practical things that you can implement within the system to kind of like get to this place. Um, One thing is, and I already talked about some of these things a bit, but if you're going to a work order and you are, reopening this to make a correction, just leaving a reason here so that it appears in that audit log can be really good. um, at just being transparent with why this is happening and tying that to maybe other pieces of documentation that you have, whether they're in elevated signals or not, deviations, reports, CAPAs, just to show that proactivity to clients. So that appears here when you're reopening work orders as well as when you're going to records and if you're making an edit to this and you're saving that edit, it'll ask you for a reason. Another one, I mean, this seems obvious, but um, just like customizing your forms, you can do things like within your forms, just like adding some steps, making it reflect your SOPs a bit more can help a lot. With just, having them match up, like, okay, if we have this form and you got the SOP open next to it, is it capturing the same information? Adding work instructions in there can also kind of help with, ensuring that the right steps are being taken in the physical world. Um, and then if you're not doing so already, just attaching that to the work order so that everything is kind of together. The inventory piece of the work, as well as the quality piece of the work, is all tied together in one package within the work order. Um, Makes it easier to review. Um, and with that as well, kind of using the verify and like the lock functionality within this as well to kind of bake in some type of like review process. I know it can be a pretty chaotic world sometimes when working in your facility, but using verify, whether something is verified or not, to kind of flag if someone's looked at this recently or not is a good way to go about that because mistakes happen. Um, but if things linger for too long and it's been maybe a couple weeks or something, you go chase down whoever was working on something. Maybe by that point, they've forgotten or maybe the scrap piece of paper they were using. So just baking in some kind of review process, honestly, can help a ton. And and this one's not even within the software. Um, just providing training to more users on using the software. I know there's limitations sometimes. Maybe your users don't have corporate emails, or maybe there's like device limitations. You physically can't have a device in a room, or you don't have enough devices to go around. But if you can, training more users and just getting the data entry closer to where that data is generated can just help eliminate a lot of mistakes as well. And just, overall improving concurrency is never a bad thing. Um, One thing that I see that's fairly common is destruction lot usage, kind of just being like this bucket that you throw into. We tried to design this to kind of match physical, or what we understood as um, physical process of the destruction as much as we could. So within a destruction lot, you can throw events in and that'll remove things from inventory. But taking the time to go through and close your lots when, that list of when that lot physically is being destroyed, and then applying your witness signatures there and just keeping up to date on that can help a lot with keeping maybe the lots smaller if you can. Obviously, um, it's not always a possibility. Speaking of destruction stuff, if we go into our facility settings here, if you haven't set this up yet, throwing your facility address in here, getting your destruction method set up, getting your destruction witness statement set up, will get you kind of these field again. Fill in here and here, as well as the witness statement right above the digital signatures on the actual destruction uh, PDF as well. The other thing too is you can customize how many destruction witness signatures you need. So if you want to have more or less, that's always something you can configure here as well. And if for some reason your destruction location is different from your facility address, because right now what it does is this is checked, it just kind of puts whatever in this box into the documentation. But if you want it to be something else, you can just uncheck that and add some information here, and that'll be what appears within destruction documentation. And then the last thing is if you're using purchase orders, if you're using shipping orders, or if you're doing, I don't know, co-packing or white labeling, just getting your vendor information set up here and also create a boost as well, as it kind of leaves less of these fields empty when you're looking at it for any shipping orders or purchase orders that you might be receiving. That customer detail and contact information will fill out there as well. That's pretty much everything that I have prepared from a demo point of view. So thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching. Um, I'll hop over to the question section. Wendy sent in a couple. Um, Reporting categories. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so for reporting categories under quality, we have a section for, sorry, reporting. We have a section for reporting categories. So what you can do is you can set something up like dried cannabis. My example here might be a little bit simplified because I don't have too many things in here, but you can basically choose product or product categories to include or exclude from a reporting category. So for example, like I want this to include dried cannabis and packaged, for example, but I don't want fresh cannabis, for example. If I set that up and then I go to my reports, um, whenever I download a, that's a bad example. If I go to download my monthly opening inventory detailed, um, I can choose under reporting options a reporting category. I can pull for just dried cannabis, for example. And when I pull this one down, this will only have line items that are inclusive of what I chose and excludes any lines that I excluded from the reporting category. So if there's some like reports that you're commonly pulling for specific reasons, this could be a good way to like just pre-filter your reports before you actually go ahead and pull them. Um, the other half of your question, Wendy, was download into CSV always end up needing to resave as a workbook. I'm not super sure I understand. I mean, is that like just opening it in like Excel? I'm not really sure. I think that might be an Excel thing, unless I'm misinterpreting the question. I apologize if so. Can the inventory trace go all the way back to seed? That is a great question, actually. Right now, the trace inventory function and the recall report function, the graphs that I showed. Actually, I wonder if I still have one open. Um, this kind of ends with inventory, and we don't have it punching all the way back through plants yet. If it did, then yeah, seeds would be on the other side of that. We definitely have the information required to add that to this. So if that's something of interest, let us know, and we can put that on our list, and we can get to that over time. The default download of report is a CSV. If you want to use filter functions, you need to resave as XLS. Oh, interesting. Maybe we can take that one offline, Wendy. I'm interested in what issue that you're running into. You should be able to like if you open a CSV in Excel, you should be able to filter on those. So I can help you with that offline. Um, yeah, if you have any suggestions or anything like that, you can always send them over to success@elevatedsignals.com. Um, more than happy to take your feedback as always. Especially when it comes to this auditing stuff. If there's any like common questions that you get from auditors, um, something that always comes up and something you always have difficulty kind of grabbing the information for, we'd love to know more about that so that we can make it easier to access that type of information within our system. So, yeah, any feedback is always welcome. We've got about half an hour of our time left. If there's any other questions anyone wanted to throw in, uh, we can go through those. If you have any other questions that come up later while you're thinking about this, you can throw them over to success@elevated. But otherwise, maybe we can close it off early if no one else has anything that they wanted to go through. But can you prevent a work order from closing if the processing loss is out of range? Um, I don't think so right now, but we have added in the work order settings. Um, if you have show processing loss enabled, there's a setting here for add process loss warning at the very least, and you can select a bound. So um, the upper and lower bound. So if you want the processing loss to be like 10%, then the upper and with like a error range of like 5, then maybe like 15 and 5 would be what you would throw in here. Or if you wanted like no processing loss with an error range of 5, it'd be like 5 and like -5, just to give you an idea of what you would want to throw in here. So this would show like a yellow box, but nothing that actually prevents a work order from closing right now. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I don't think we're getting much more questions right now. So if you have anything else, feel free to send it over to success@elevatedsignals.com and we'll be happy to get back to you offline.